9 o'clock, and our meeting is scheduled for 9 o'clock. Let me make use of the opportunity to welcome all of you that have attended. This is a normal standing committee of public accounts of the provincial legislature, and is held in terms of the virtual rules of committees that was adopted by Parliament earlier this year. With us, we are having two departments that are going to be making presentation based on our previous resolution. That will be the Department of Education as well as the Department of the Premier. I must indicate in advance that there is an apology from the Premier. He is unable to be part of the meeting due to other commitment. Also, there is an indication from Mr. Scrooder of the Department of Education, who is also going to be leaving us early. Now, I don't know whether are there any other apologies that you might have received, Mr. Dustin, procedural officer. First.
Morning, Chairperson. No, there's no other apologies that was received, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I see there's the hand from Honorable Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm putting an apology for Honorable Maseko. She's struggling with connectivity. She will join the meeting as soon as she's able to. And on that state, I will be standing in as a full member of this committee until such time as Honorable Maseko joins.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Honorable. I see there's the hand of Mr. Brian Scrooder.
Yeah, Board Chair, good morning. That's Brian Scrooder. I'm the HOD Education. Good morning to you and to the committee and to also the other team members. I just wanted to check whether you received an apology from the MEC for Education, Minister Schaefer.
Yes.
Have you received an apology from her?
No, thank you for reminding me. There is we did receive that apology that she was on leave and the leave was put in long before the meeting, so she is also unable to be part of us.
Thank you.
Now, then, if there is no further apologies, members, I will want us to proceed.
Sorry, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. My hand is up.
Member Porter, Chair.
Honorable Porter, yes. Honorable Porter.
Good morning. I'm joining the meeting for the education part. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much. Honorable Mitchell, is your hand still up?
My apologies, Chair. It's now lowered.
Oh, sure, thanks. Now then, honorable members, as I've indicated that we've got this presentation, what I will do, we'll start with the Department of Education, and I will hand over to Mr. Schroeder to introduce to us the delegation and thereafter proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for this opportunity as well. I am supported today by the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Leon Eli, who will be speaking to the presentation. He'll also be managing any questions if they come after I have left. He's also responsible for fraud prevention with an entire team in the department, which is pertinent to today's engagement. So Mr. Leon Eli, the CFO. I also have Mr. Sali Faker, who's our Director of Labour Relations, and will particularly give some information if required on the aspects related to the control functions, because a number of the PFS recommendations then speak to disciplinary investigations and where they are related to employees of the department. Mr. Faker would speak to that. He might also make comments as we go on about the employees that are in the education sector that are not government employees, namely those employed by school governing bodies, and how we deal with such cases in events of potential fraud or other aspects. The third member that is joining me is Ms. Washila Sali. She's the Director Internal Control and plays a vital role in follow-ups and ensuring that the processes are followed and reporting on those follow-ups. Okay, with that, I'm going to give one or two introductory remarks, and then Mr. Eli will do the presentation and speak to the presentation. Thank you very much. The focus is on quarter 1 and quarter 2 of the 1920 financial year, and is based on a report which the Provincial Forensic Services had given to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts on the 8th of May 2020. And at that time, it referred to either completed cases and also referred to certain control issues. And the question that the committee asks is the fact that there are a number of those that have not been completely implemented, which means they're not implemented, they're not concluded. And the committee wants an understanding of how that is and where we stand in that space. And that is what we will gladly report on today. I just want to say that in the education sector, which is particular and different to another government department, many of these cases are related to incidences that happen in schools. We've got 1,500 odd schools in the province, and investigations that then relate to schools or to school governing bodies are not as easy and quick as investigations are that refer to, say, officials in the departmental offices. And it is also sometimes, and that's part of the reason why it takes a longer time, besides the complexities of some of these cases, but it takes longer because when schools close, you can't have investigations pursuing. You don't have the evidence, you don't have people at school. And so both the June holiday, which is 3 weeks last year, in the relevant time, also the investigations that are then followed up after the first and second court also go into September, and the long December holiday, which is also dead time for our ability to do investigations. That's one of the issues. The secondary issue is related to the complexity of schools, governing bodies, and schools also have auditors. Their own auditors then also sometimes ask for documentation, and therefore the ability to get the documentation is not always immediately at hand when requested. But the details of those cases and also the processes, Mr. Eli will give you more details of. I just wanted to contextualize the nature of investigations in the education department, which is very particular to the education sector. Chair, with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Eli to share the presentation and speak to the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Eli?
Good morning, Chair. I know, Chair, that we have, good morning, Chairperson and members of SCOPA. I know we have sent through, oh, right, this is not the right presentation. Right, Chairperson, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
It's I can't see it on my side for some technical reason. I can't see it on my side. Do you see it? It's a Western Cape Education Department PFS recommendations. Quarter 1,
it was
2.
on. It was on,
no,
but it's
we
off
can't.
now. We can't see it now.
Mr. Eli, if I may just interject, Mr. Eli, the presentation that was on was one that you selected. That was not the correct one, Mr. Eli.
Yes.
If you take a, it's not. Let us just see. Select one again, Mr. Eli. I'll inform when it is visible. It's not visible yet. Reshare, please.
Sure.
You'll have to show the share button again. Is your presentation open in the background, Mr. Eli, on your machine? It has to be open in the background.
Yeah. Can you see it now?
And nearly 1 minute. It's not up yet. Yes, now it is
Yes.
up. You can just go to the bottom of the presentation block, please. So that it goes into presentation mode. Just move your cursor to the bottom line. At the bottom, that's it.
Okay. Can I start?
Just click on it. It's not gone into presentation mode yet. You're not in presentation mode yet.
Okay.
There we go.
We're there now.
That's excellent.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. If I can start off, these are again, as the SG introduced the topic around the scope of feedback. So it was, as the SG said, it was done by PFS, Provincial Forensic Services. You gave you a brief on the 8th of May, 2020. So this presentation will have content relating to their recommendations, and then also the status of where we are with the WCD ones as well, further from that. So the PFS report that was given to you on the 8th of May spoke about seven disciplinary recommendations. And of the 7, 4 were implemented and 3 were not implemented. And the 3 we will talk about in this presentation. Then there were 15 control recommendations which were also made. 10 of that was not implemented at that particular stage, and then 5 was implemented. So we will talk about the Chair, with your permission, we will talk about the 10 that was not implemented and the progress around that as well. So if we go to the WCD status, it's exactly where we are with those ones. Sorry. So if we move on to the disciplinary recommendation about the 3 not implementable, about around the disciplinary recommendations, then I just want to give you the detail around that. So for the 3 disciplinary recommendations that were not implementable, the one relating to insufficient evidence to start, and then to the 2, of the 2, the person that was implicated retired before the forensic report was released. So we've got no jurisdiction over that. So when people leave the employment of the department, our jurisdiction falls away. Obviously, in the case of a criminal matter, that would anyway have been reported by PFS to SAPS. But in this particular case, when the person resigns, we've got no jurisdiction. In the other case, we've had a case where the witness have resigned from the department, and therefore there are difficulties in proceeding with the disciplinary case in that regard, because in some of these cases we require witnesses to take the matter further. I just want at this particular point in stage here, I just want Mr. Faker, Sally Faker, just to appraise the committee of some of the underlying issues as far as disciplinary recommendations are concerned. Mr. Faker.
Maybe it's good actually that I first explain actually the process of what we actually follow. We basically got a dual employment relationship actually at WCD, which is a bit unique in comparison to all the other the government.
Sorry, Chair, Mr. Faker. It's Brian Schroeder speaking. Sorry, Mr. Faker, for interrupting. You are very quiet. It's very soft.
The volume, yeah. The volume is very soft.
Is that
Thank
better?
you.
I've got my
A
face
little
in
bit
the
better,
screen
but
there
not.
now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe it's important actually that I just mentioned in terms of the process what we actually follow, so that everybody can just be aware. Actually, we basically got a dual employment relationship at WCD, which is unique in comparison to the rest of the public service, because we got people employed actually by the SGB, and we got people employed actually by the WCD. If we actually receive a case that is from the forensic audit people, we conduct an investigation actually into that particular case. Based in terms of our investigation, we will decide to charge or or not to charge. Reason being is because sometimes the evidence actually which we identify may differ in comparison to what we receive actually in that regard. With regard to the process actually going forward, we will appoint an independent presiding officer once we charge actually the person, and that person will actually chair the hearing in that regard. The person, the accused person will also receive, will also have somebody to actually represent him either in the form of an attorney, which differs in comparison to the rest of the public service. Alternatively, they can have an employee, or they can have a union rep in that regard actually as well. With the three cases that Mr. Eli has actually mentioned, when we did an investigation actually into it, the one employee actually, by the time we received the report from actually FIU, that person is already actually retired already, because if the FIU report was received on the 1st of December 2019, and that person retired actually on the 31st actually of October in that regard. That is then whereby Mr. Eli has actually mentioned actually whereby FIU will then report the matter actually to SAPS, and then a criminal a process will be followed in that regard. With regard actually to the other case, we've even whereby we've identified these insufficient evidence to actually charge the person with regard to actually theft and fraud. FIU could not actually obtain all the documentation whereby we could prove actually a fraud and a corruption case at the particular school. But we did charge actually those particular educators with. We charged them with regard to the mismanagement actually of funds, and the two educators actually involved, the one received actually a fine equating to 3 months salary in that regard, and the other one actually received a fine equating to 2 months salary in that regard. The third case, which was a bit more actually complex, we based in terms of the witnesses actually that was not actually available at a particular stage by the time the hearing came to be. We had to withdraw the charges in that regard, and by the time we reissued the charge sheet in that regard, the person actually resigned. But what we have done is we've actually placed a block onto the personnel system, and whenever that person received employment throughout the entire actually public service, that person will not be able to actually get paid. We will then actually transfer all our documents to that particular department actually with that department can charge the person actually again. However, in the main actually with regard to all our forensic audit cases, we classify our cases into certain of the categories. We got a category A, which we regard as being the sexual molestation cases, and then we got a category A also, which we regard as the fraud and the corruption cases. We then actually attempt to finalize all those cases within a period of actually 90 days. If regulations indicates actually that we should at least initiate an investigation within a 30-day period in that regard. So all the cases that we have received for that particular financial year, what we're actually speaking about now is we basically finalize actually all of it. So that's basically in a nutshell in terms of how we deal with all of these cases. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Faker. Chair, if I can go on, or Chair, do you want me to take questions, or can we carry on with the rest of the presentation?
We prefer that you carry on with the presentation, and the questions will be asked after you finished.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll carry on with my presentation. So if we go on to the control recommendations, which PFS indicated to you that 10 was not implemented. As far as progress is concerned, Chair, we finalized in the interim, we finalized 6 of those control recommendations, and 4 of that is still in progress. If I can just appraise you of the 4 that's still in progress. So of the 4 cases that's still in progress, in the one particular case, the district has asked us a bit more time to finalize that case. They in a stage of wrapping up. But obviously with COVID and the closure of schools, and as my HOD has indicated in the SG, that obviously it's a bit of a challenging environment for us at the moment with schools opening and closing. But the district in this particular case have asked for a bit more time to then finalize the case. Then we've got 2 cases, as it's indicated, where we have partially implemented it. We asked the records that we require to finalize those particular control recommendations is with the school auditors, and that's been aggravated further by the fact that we have the COVID matter where schools were closed also for a particular point in time. And then we have 1 case where we recommended that or PFS recommended that the school implement a cashless system, and that particular case they require further consultations with the school governing body and the parent body so that we can make sure that the school can actually then move over to a cashless environment. So that require a bit more consultation as far as trying to close those particular cases are concerned. Yeah, so that's it around those 4 cases. These cases will obviously, in terms of concluding, will once schools get to a level of functionality where we can interact with all the role players, we can then finalize these 4 outstanding cases. Yeah, so this is just the detail around this. The 6 we've finalized already, where some of those matters were dealt with as recommended by Provincial Forensic Services as well, Chair. So thank you, Chair. That's the end of my presentation. I'm not sure if my HOD wants to make some final remarks in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes our presentation. We hope that we've covered the issues requested, and we're ready to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, can I have an indication of members who would like to ask questions? Are there any questions, honorable members? I see Honorable Nkondlo and Honorable Maseko in that order. Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the Education Department team and their presentation. Just few questions. One to the HOD. In his intro, he explains, I think, some of the challenges of these kind of cases within the department. And fortunately, I think also the presentation delved especially on the issue of time, because I heard him speaking about, you know, the challenge given the school curriculum and timetable. You know, these cases may take longer. Now, my question would then relate to the 90-day period, is that given what the HOD was raising, has all of these cases been done and concluded within the 90-day period? That's the first question. And secondly, to that, Chair, if within that the department can just explain from the time a case is reported, if they can give those time lags from the time a case is reported to the time that it is concluded. I would assume now we already have got a particular ceiling according to the requirement, which is 90 days. Have all these cases, you know, been done within that period? And I'm asking also to get some indication, especially on the SGBs, SGB related cases versus the one of the department, is that what becomes the impact to the stability, especially primarily the ones in the schools, that is the SGB related ones? Because if there is a matter of disciplinary nature that is not concluded, what are some of those implications, and how are those managed, you know, in terms of stability of that environment, given, I think, the issues that were raised, you know, of how thorough one or the investigation may need to, you know, to take place, if they can just allude to that fact. And the last one, in the resignations that have been given, I hear that it's if I understand properly, is that those individuals, once they resign, does it mean then the case is closed, given that I think there's an indication that there's no jurisdiction once the person leaves the employ of the department? So all I'm saying, if there was an offense that was actually being investigated and that person resigns, now what happens? Are you saying, does the case get closed? What then becomes the, the implication of that case in as far as the department now is concerned? And unfortunately, on these specific ones, I'm not necessarily having the nature of the kind of case, that one would be able to say if it was something that related either, to some mismanagement. What do you do as a department when the offender has decided to resign? I'm just interested if maybe there are any cases, or if the department can actually share around that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. And again, I'm sorry I logged in a little bit later, but without wasting any time, I just want to find out, Mr. Faker talked about the category A category A on the, I think it's one of the systems that you have put in place to sort of have the control, or to sort of have the reactive measures in place for the disciplinaries. Now, you said category A is for fraud or maybe corruption. If I can find out how many categories do you have, and what are those categories, maybe to help us have an understanding of how do you cluster the disciplinaries per category. And the other one, it will be the block system. Also, you talked about the block system for those who have resigned. So how is it the first time that you put that in place? And if it's not the first time, how effective has that been working to make sure, because it's not the first time that we have the employees that really resign when they know they are to face disciplinaries. So is that the first thing that is implemented, or if it's not, how are you going? If it's the first time that is implemented, how are you going to make sure? Is there a sort of a regulation? I don't know how to put this one, but is there a system that is a must? Is there a policy that is within the department to make sure that that is implemented, or is just the reaction for now for this specific case? And again, what I want to find out, you talked about the case that was reported the 1st of December 2019, and then it went on until the 31st of October. And I want to understand that, what were the reasons, because then it was not the time of Corona, what were the reasons for it to take such a lot of time, and what were the challenges in between as you were doing the investigations? And when you talk about sometimes there is no sufficient evidence to charge, maybe if you can give us an example to have an understanding of when do you say it's sufficient evidence, when do you say it's insufficient evidence to charge, just for us, for the referral, to make sure that as we are in SCOPA in future, we know that insufficient means is this, is when the scenarios are like this. For now, thank you, Chairperson. I think that's all.
Sorry, before you might respond, Mrs. Rudd, I see there's a hand of Honorable Batman. I just want us to deal with all the questions once and for all. Honorable Batman.
Thank you, Chief.
Your volume is very low.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Your volume is very low.
Apologies. I'll try and speak loud. This COVID global health pandemic. What we started to see in the beginning of the year was that
Chair, we still cannot hear.
Honorable Patman. Honorable Patman.
Yes,
apart from the fact that your volume is low, I think there's also some problem with your connection as well. We sometimes break up or your voice get elongated as you are talking. Can you try again?
Apologies, Chairperson.
It's improving. It's improving.
But is it better now?
Yeah.
Apologies, Chairperson. There's a tower that went down in our area yesterday afternoon, and it's still down, so I've had to switch to new devices for committee meetings today. So I apologize for the breaking up and all of that. Chairperson, so my question is, when COVID started, this global, many people were forced to start going online and embracing procedures and adapting to processes in ways they even didn't think they would do in the beginning, or procedures and processes that many people were reluctant to start using initially. And then this has been compounded by load shedding in our country. For example, yesterday and today, we've seen many members or they're struggling with connectivity and stuff like that. And what this has created is, I want to know is, in terms of the procedures and the processes of investigations within this department, how has the department used the internet and online adaptabilities, if any, in terms of investigation? Do they go to the person in person when they do the investigation? Do the person come to the department? Do they do it online? What specifically does the department do to ensure that the investigations, if online, are fair towards the person investigating? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Patman. I see there are no further questions from members. If there's none, I will hand over to the HOD, Mr. Shruda.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the questions also asked, good probing questions. The first one directed to me is whether everything was done in 3 months this period. The answer is unfortunately no, but we've also tried to explain the reasons why it is not so. Our 90-day period is what we attempt to do. Being a large, complex department with the complexities of SGBs and schools, I tried at the beginning to indicate that was part of the reason why there are times when we don't meet the 90 days. But I want to assure the committee that it's not because we are lax or lackadaisical or not taking these issues important. The 90 days is for all disciplinary cases. And we have 42,000 employees. We're the largest employer in the province. And all of those employees are open to disciplinary cases across the 1,500 odd schools. So not all of those cases, of course, are fraud cases. There are many, many disciplinary cases, and the 90 days apply to all disciplinary cases. What Mr. Faker was trying to illustrate was the high priority we place on fraud or potential fraud cases and anything of a sexual nature, sexual misconduct nature. Those are two categories of potential offences that we feel very strongly about. The other disciplinary cases are all important. Some of them are grievances, some of them are misconducts. There are a whole host of possibilities. If you take a look at and as Mr. Faker said, there are two different categories of employment acts or laws under which we employ. If you take a look at the South African Schools Act, for example, the description of the typical misconduct kinds of offences go past the alphabet. It goes into double alphabet digits listed in the Act. So it's a very comprehensive one. And then, of course, there also the Normal Labour Relations Act for public servants and so forth. So that's the first one. And the rest of Member Nkondu's questions, I'm going to ask Mr. Eli and his colleagues to respond to. I just want to also refer to one aspect of Member Maseko's questions, the category question. Mr. Faker can respond. The time frames we've tried to explain to it, and I'll give Mr. Faker the opportunity to try to give an example of what caused the delay in the case that you cite. And it's not satisfactory for us, but the realities of those investigations that are sometimes complex. Then also in terms of what is sufficient and not sufficient evidence, Mr. Faker can also respond to that. But Member Bartman's questions, the online procedures, and it's compounded by load shedding. And of course, it's now also very much compounded by the COVID environment. And so the investigations that were not concluded by March. And remember the PFS cases, Provincial Forensic Service cases, is a small fraction of all our disciplinary cases in the department. The Provincial Forensic cases are those, and the majority of those, the department refers to the PFS. There are also sometimes cases that come to the PFS from outside, either whistleblowers or others, but the majority of those our department picks up in our investigations in schools. District officials think it might be fraud, and if it's a fraud potential case, it's referred to the PFS to investigate. And the reports of the PFS then either tells us what to do in the case of a fraud or corruption. If it's a criminal case, the PFS lays the criminal case directly. It's also incumbent on the HOD, the accounting officer, to ensure that criminal cases are laid, and in agreement between ourselves and the PFS, the PFS lays those cases to be assured that it is rapidly submitted to the South African Police Service. But the disciplinary cases that are then referred to us, often the PFS refers cases to us that are not in their jurisdiction, but that had been submitted to them, say, by a whistleblower. Then we do the disciplinary investigation as a department. The question about the process and procedures online, it's a combination of those aspects. And we are reviewing the post-COVID impact. All the investigations prior to COVID were investigations that were face-to-face investigations. Investigators went out, looked at sometimes confiscated documents, demanded documents, or proof or evidence documents. That still has to happen. The access to documentation still has to be physically collected. We're not yet at the stage where we say, and we take some trusted individual at the source of the problem and say, scan the documents and send it. We still collect at the moment, but we do online parts of that investigation. So it's a combination. And I think post-COVID, as we review our procedures, which we do continually, the focus at the moment has been on reviewing our education procedures, teaching and learning procedures, but our administrative procedures are also undergoing transformation in the COVID period and in the post-COVID period. For example, our call centers, our walk-in centers, our numbers where people can lodge complaints, etc. All of those issues as well. So it'll be ongoing, Member Bartman, and I think nothing will be precisely the same post-COVID-19. I'm going to ask Mr. Eli to start responding, and then Mr. Faker can come in. Mr. Eli?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just around the question around the first member, we asked the impact on stability at the SGB level when there are disciplinary cases that's happening at that school. I think, Honourable Member, we try as far as possible, we try to deal with those cases as quickly as possible, because we obviously understand the impact at school level around these matters as well. I mean, we are aware of those things, and therefore either from our own investigation or our request to Provincial Forensic Services to give attention to those particular matters so that we can bring stability to the school. But again, in that particular case, if we do require PFS to investigate, then we are unfortunately, we are bound by their timelines as well. But we try to, as far as priority is concerned, we try to put those cases on top, if you want to say that, put it that way, of the list to be investigated, just to make sure we can stabilize the school community as quickly as possible as well. So that's just in terms of response to that particular matter as well. Then as far as the control matters are concerned, which you try to allude to, I think we try to deal with those cases as quickly as possible as well with the recommendation. But as my HOD has indicated, there are quite a number of role players. Just to give you a bit of background, when it comes to the training of SGB and SGB members, remember these are parents that the parent body have elected to serve on the SGB committees, and there are financial functions that lies within their domain. Although the South African schools have made provision for school principals to assist governing bodies in that regard, as far as their financial duties are concerned, but the primary responsibility does lie with governing bodies. And so every 3 years, we have potentially new governing body members coming into that fold, which we have to train. And that training is ongoing. So if there are lapses in as far as controls are concerned, that unfortunately does take a bit of time, and it requires quite an intense program there and over time to get them to understand what the challenges are and how to resolve those things, and then also conclude on those procedural matters as well. I think we have to remember that the SGB members do not work for the WCD. They have the normal jobs, and they do these things after hours, voluntary as well. So it depends on their own availability of how we can conclude on some of these matters, because in some cases, they have to have meetings, they have to minute these things, they have to sign off on some documentation as well. So that do take a bit of time, and therefore we are in those cases bound by the availability of governing bodies and their willingness to work with us to conclude on these matters. I will just ask Mr. Faker then to respond to the other questions, which is mainly in his domain as well, as far as these other matters are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eli. Thank you, SG. Just to answer in terms of some of the issues actually that's not been answered. We, as SG has actually identified, we attempt to finalize all the cases within the period of at least actually 90 days, and a lot of them actually are. Where it may not be actually finalized, actually, for example, is whereby an investigation takes actually a bit longer because of the complexity of the case in that regard. And many times actually when we charge the person within a period of actually 90 days, for example, the attorney or the union rep can request a longer period for them to do the investigation from their side in that regard. So there is a host of reasons actually why it cannot actually happen. That's besides all the schools that close actually on at least over the month of December in that regard. So with regard to all the other questions asked, resignations is actually one of the issues that is a challenge at this particular stage. However, actually, the Education Act makes a provision that if we charge actually a person and the person receive a charge sheet in that regard, and the person resigns actually while we have issued the person with a charge sheet, that we regard as being a deemed dismissal actually. So the person will have a dismissal against the person's name in that regard. So the person has not gotten away actually with anything. That person would have then have been discharged in that regard. The categories what we actually follow, we've got category A. In education, we've got section 70 cases. That is regarded as being all those cases actually that is automatically, if you find actually guilty, the presiding officer will have no choice but to dismiss you in that regard. Then we got what we call your category B cases. Those are all your other cases. For example, your late coming, your instructions that you're not actually followed in that regard. Then we got what we call category C cases. Those are, for example, actually your minor cases. That is, for example, what the principal can for example, attend to actually in school in that regard. But the category A cases is the ones actually that we place a huge emphasis on because it deals with fraud and corruption. And of course, we got our sexual molestation of the learners in that particular one actually as well. The block on system, the block on the Persal system is something that has been actually implemented a number of years already. It was actually initiated actually from the Western Cape years ago. Now speaking about 20 years ago, if not longer actually, whereby we requested the DPSA at that particular stage together with the Persal with the Persal people to come up actually with a particular system whereby if the person, for example, is found guilty and is dismissed, or if the person actually resigns, whereby we can at least have actually a record actually on system. So if that particular person comes into service at any particular stage, actually, the Persal system will chuck that particular person out, and any other department would at least be able to actually request us or any other department for the reasons why there is a block against that particular person's name. The system works actually extremely well because there's many people actually, for example, they found actually guilty in the Western Cape. Now, for example, they go to the Eastern Cape and they try to find employment in that regard. The Persal block is actually a national block throughout the entire actually public service, be it actually educators or be it actually appointed in terms of the Public Service Act. Just with regard to the one case which the other member had actually identified, we received the case actually on the 31st. The person resigned actually on the 31st of October 2019, but the FIU report actually was received on the 1st of December 2019. So it was not actually whereby we took a year actually with the case. The person actually went into a retirement before the report was received in that regard. Insufficient evidence. There's a host of reasons actually why, for example, a hearing is dealt with exactly in terms of the same principles, for example, as what we deal with actually in court. We need prima facie evidence in that regard. Many times, for example, we get actually hearsay evidence, and that is not regarded as big evidence. For example, actually, I heard, or this particular heard, or the third person has heard in that regard. And when you follow up actually with evidence in that regard, the stories will differ from actually person to person to person. Likewise, actually, for example, if we receive a report for actually for you, which has happened in terms of actually a number of cases, the people has already actually left actually a system. For example, they would have left actually for the Northern Cape or for the Eastern Cape, and sometimes they no longer employed in the public services. Likewise, actually, for example, there may be with regard to actually evidence, there may be issues that don't that correspond, for example, in terms of what we have actually found out, and sometimes in terms of what is indicated in terms of the FIU reports. HE is actually correct. The challenge is not coming in with regard to actually COVID-19. So at the moment, in terms of all our investigations, we're busy utilizing a hybrid system actually at the moment. There's certain cases that we must go out to the various schools and consult actually with people. And unfortunately, the corruption cases is to a large extent are still actually paper-based. So we need to go pick up actually the documentation, sit down actually with the school, the corporate officer, and work through that on actually a manual basis in that regard. However, actually we also got a system whereby if we charge actually people now with actually misconduct, we utilize in terms as far as possible. We try to do it virtually, but sometimes it just don't work actually.
I think that's covered it, Mr. Faker.
That's all, yeah. I think it's all.
It's covered.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. May I make a final wrap-up comment, please, Chair? Chairperson, I'm going to make a quick wrap-up comment.
Sorry, SOD. My apologies. I have muted myself. I wanted to check from members. Are there any follow-ups that they would like to make? Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you for the explanation of the categories. Maybe if I can get the clarity on from the explanation, the category A, fraud, corruption, and it includes the sexual nature. So when you have the scenario of where an employee then resigns and the complaint is about the sexual nature, how do you deal with that? Because we have seen that it has been happening from the other provinces that before that can be followed up, because you cannot take it to the police station if you haven't interacted or you don't have enough evidence to that effect. Now, how do you go about to maneuver yourself as a department to make sure that some of those culprits are being stopped in continuing with whatever that is wrong that it might be they're doing to the other provinces? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Maseko. Honorable Porter.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm following up on that question of Member Maseko, and I want to ask the SG in regard to those perpetrators or culprits, or whatever you want to call them, in regard to the sexual offenders, what is this thing called?
Register.
Register, yes. Are there any of those names of those culprits that perpetrated in this province in that register? Thanks, Chair.
SG.
Thank you, Chair. The issue about sexual offences, it's a little bit off the topic of today, the fraud, but it's a very important one because it falls into the same our category of concern. If someone, for example, has resigned and we don't have a legal control over them anymore, we then suggest that the individual against whom the alleged sexual offence has been done actually lays a charge with the police, which they can do for a sexual offence. So in those cases, we then say to a teacher, if it was a teacher that has raised the issue of a sexual offence, normally we would do an investigation, a disciplinary investigation, and at the base of that, we'll either make it a criminal charge or charge the offender ourselves. If we do not have that investigative jurisdiction anymore, then we suggest that the victim lay a charge with the police. That's the only recourse that they then have. Unfortunately, sometimes when there are children at stake, then parents feel, you know, the potential exposure, even if the person or the whistleblower, and if it's a minor, can be protected. Sometimes they feel that they don't want to go that route, and then it is outside our hands. One has to be cautious also in fairness to the fact that sometimes there are allegations that are not founded for reasons that are unfortunate. And this is true in all potential offences. So you always have to be very careful that you don't label someone that is unfairly, because of jealousy or because of discipline or because of something alleged, being charged as a perpetrator of those deeds. You've got to make sure that the facts, the investigation, and the evidence agrees to that. The issue of the sexual offenders register, a person gets put on that register by a court of law if they are found guilty of a sexual offence. In the case of education, we refer the outcome of such cases to the South African Council of Educators, who then make or register that offence on the register of the Council of Education, South African Council of Educators. And anyone who is employed as an educator has to have a SAY certificate, and that can then be traced that way. The alternative option is also that if we have done a disciplinary investigation, as Mr. Faker has indicated, it can be a block put on Persal, and that is the other recourse that we have. Chair, I do want to make a final comment, but I will do so when you indicate that all the questions have been exhausted.
I think they've all been exhausted, SG, because I did not get any indication from members. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I can then just in wrap up say again, thank you. I really appreciate the engagement on these matters. We consider allegations, as we said repeatedly now this morning, particularly fraud and financial transgressions. We consider them very serious matters. The majority of the cases that get referred, for example, to the Provincial Forensic Services are found not to be fraud or theft. And if they are found not to be fraud or theft, although allegations have been indicated by that, then they could be financial mismanagement or control issues that come to the fore. And that's when the PFS then refers it back to us, say it's not their jurisdiction because they only investigate fraud cases, but then make recommendations to us if there are indicators that we investigate potential financial mismanagement or control issues. And so that's the relationship between ourselves and the PFS. Mr. Eli alluded to the fact that the PFS also has limited capacity, and these cases go to them either from ourselves, where our own officials in their normal investigation, because we look at financial statements, we look at financial policies of schools particularly, and if our district officials or inspectors that inspect it pick it up, then in those instances, and this is why the period from the reported potential misdemeanor is difficult to just say a fixed time, and I'll explain that in conclusion. If we get the report, it depends how and where and what it's about. From the moment that we get the report, it could be that that report has gone directly to the PFS by a whistleblower. In such a case, the PFS does their investigation, which is not in our control in terms of the timeframes. It depends on their caseload. It depends on the complexity of the fraud case, and many fraud cases are not clear-cut. Fraudsters have sometimes hidden tracks, and the PFS is expert in trying to unravel those cases, but it does take time. There are some reports that come to the WCD, some that go to the PFS. If it comes to the WCD, we investigate and act on it. Then there are also cases where the WCD reports it to the PFS, and that comes because our initial investigation has indicated that there might be indicators of fraud or theft, and it's not clear-cut for us, and therefore the specialist investigation of the PFS is asked to go look at it because they've got specialists that are trained in that regard. So if there are suspicions of or a degree of evidence, then it goes for the investigation of the PFS. If we have clear indication that it is a fraudulent, an allegation of fraud, it goes to the PFS to investigate. So those investigations are either shortcut because it comes directly to the WCD, or it takes the additional route of PFS. And so by very nature, from the report of the allegation, if it goes to PFS, could have a slightly longer period from the initial alleged report. But Chair, I want to just say again that we have good people that are determined in our department to take a look at and to ensure that these things are investigated and dealt with to the best of our ability. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, HOD, and I think that takes us to the end of the presentation in this part of the meeting. Thank you very much. You are free to go, SG, and your delegation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate that. Mr. Eli might wish to remain for the IT bit if he can, but I do need to leave. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thanks. Now, honorable members, we are going to move now to the department of the Premier's presentation. Welcome and good morning, DG. Now, I'm going to hand over to you. You can introduce your delegation that is together with you.
Good morning, Chairperson, and also good morning to all the members of SCOPA. From my side, I've got Mr. Andre Jumat. He is the head of the CSC and CI, who's our IT component, falls within that environment. Then I've also got Mr. Hilton Arendse, and Hilton is the head of CI, that's Program 4 within the Department of the Premier. And then I've got Mr. Augie de Freitas, who is also responsible, for CI within that program. Chair, we've received a brief from this committee in relation to IT security, given obviously what has happened, at Casidra. And the key issue is just, what are we doing from our side, given the fact that we're responsible, for corporate CI or IT, that we do not experience the same issue. Chair, we've sent a very comprehensive presentation to the committee, basically setting out all the controls that we've got in our space. So it's really around our control environment, as it relates to the firewalls in the system, any antivirus mechanisms, to make sure that we are not ransom or basically attacked from the outside. And then obviously also, protecting our email system from any access from the, or actually forced access from the outside. Then, Chair, what the team will also do is they will take you through some analysis of what's happening more or less in the external environment, but more importantly, what is it that we're putting in place as a Western Cape government, given the extensive size of our network, to make sure that we, don't fall prey or are not unnecessarily vulnerable to some of these external attacks. Chair, you have the presentation. It's about 25 slides or so. The brief of the team is also to take you through the gist of it. So we're not going to cover every little point, but we take it also, that the presentation will also form some background reading for yourself. So Hilton, who is the head of CI, will make some opening comments, and then obviously the rest of the presentation will be done, by Mr. de Freitas, who's been long in the system. I'm sure most of you know him, and he will then take us through what are all the IT security measures that we're putting in place. Chair, so with those opening comments, I'm going to hand over to Hilton. But before I do that, I just want to check with Andre Jumat if there's anything he wants to say, and then Hilton can proceed.
Morning, Chair and members. Thanks, DG. Nothing from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilton.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. And good morning, DG, and to the rest of the CI team. Chairperson, we welcome this engagement because and we could see that the issue was picked up at Casidra, and the committee showed an interest immediately in terms of what are we doing in this regard. So, and drawing that parallel, which is quite important, and we really welcome this. So information security from our side, we take it very seriously, Chairperson, because to us, if you drop the ball on information security, you lose the trust of the people, you expose yourself to legal liability. It can impact your service continuity through ransomware, and then also the reputational harm that we'll be experiencing. So information security is always top of mind. So we have specific initiatives in our own department where we have an information security strategy and improving our information security processes and technologies, but we also have the AG that backs it up and that does a thorough assessment every year. And then we also have some external partners that we work with. So last year, Microsoft did an assessment in our environment and showed some gaps, specifically at the time when we had this heightened period of information security breaches, City of Johannesburg and some private companies also. And then we also did another assessment recently with Gartner. We looked at more than just the security, but also the culture within our environment as it relates to information security. Recently, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the one thing that we said to ourselves as an ICT team within the province was we cannot drop the ball on security. We knew that during the time of the pandemic, when people are going to work from home, the cyber hackers, they will have, to them it will be peak time, because they know that many of the organizations' staff will not be at the office. And then also the fact that your computing, your operations have now moved to the edge outside of the confines of a nice and secure corporate environment. It now moved to the homes. And that is what the hackers would have tried to zoom in and exploit vulnerabilities in that area. And we've managed to navigate that specific period, Chairperson. But as Augie will also allude in his presentation, that your security is just as good as your last update or your last day. You never know what can happen the next day. We can try and put preventative measures as much as possible and our controls, but you can never be sure that your security will be 100% and you will not be exposed to any risk going forward. All you can do is make sure that you have all the latest patches and all the latest technologies in place, and also make sure that there's a good culture in your organization as it relates to information security. We are looking now at multi-factor authentication, where when people access the laptops or the systems at home, they need to log into the system, that they get either a call from an automated call, or they need to or they receive an SMS, but that's still in the testing phase, and we're utilizing that within the CAI space, our employees within the IT space specifically. And once the concept has been proved, we'll be rounding it out further, but also Augie will also be elaborating on that. Chairperson, on that note, I'll hand over to Augie de Freitas, who will be taking us through the presentation. And as the DG said, it's quite a lengthy presentation. He won't cover all the slides in detail, but he will focus on the key issues that we need to bring to your attention. Thanks. Augie, over to you.
Good morning, members. And it's a pleasure for us to actually engage with you. We have engaged with you for ages, so I've been missing it. And that's just from our side. Can everybody see the presentation? Is it up?
Yes, it is, Augie.
Okay.
Augie, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. As the request came through relating to the...
We can't see it. I don't see it from my side. I don't know what about the other members. It comes in.
We can see it, Chair. We can see it.
You can see it?
Yes, Chair.
Chairperson, sometimes when the network is a bit slow, it takes time for the slide to reflect. You'll see it within a few seconds now.
Okay.
Okay, I will proceed. As we know, the request came as a result of the Cassandra incident. We have engaged with the IT folk at the Cassandra, and quite frankly, they've done what we would have done. So in their particular case, I'm just going to give you a short summary. Their firewall and antivirus mechanisms detected some sort of ransomware attack. The ransomware attack was either exploited, came in through the organization through the exploitation of email or brute force, but the machines that were affected were recovered. The data was not compromised, most of it was encrypted. They instituted a series of actions to improve the security posture, which we would have done as well. And they're continuously monitoring any form of attack and implementing preventative measures as much as possible. We've given them some tips, and they are doing what we would have done. As we mentioned earlier, there's no 100% guarantee, but there must be a focus on continuously improving controls around security, which is what Casidra is doing and what we are doing. So the best level of comfort and assurance around IT security is as good as the last known breach or assessment. And we focus on doing proactive assessments so that we continuously get that level of assurance that we're reasonably okay. So as part of those assessments, the agency IT audits over the past 2-3 years, they've not been able to successfully penetrate the organization from outside. So our networks are safe. They've not been able to get into it. And also they regarded that there is adequate IT security audit results attained in meeting all the national objectives by most of the departments. Recently, Microsoft, which was one of our key technology partners, they brought in specialists and they did an extensive assessment of our network and our systems and our infrastructure, and they found that there's adequate, healthy IT security controls across the network. But again, they also made some recommendations, and those recommendations we continuously work on. Just to note that over the past 20 years, we've had incidences that occur. I mean, that is inevitable. It's going to happen. The key thing is what do you do to react? How do you react to it? And how do you fix it? And how do you put in preventative measures going forward based on the lessons learned? What we can say for sure is that most of the incidents or breaches that we've had in our environment has been primarily due to finger trouble by people, errors, mistakes, sharing passwords, ignoring basic IT policies, unchanged email proxy addresses when people move, and then, of course, deliberate leaking of information, mostly by people in technology, employees, and contracted parties who are aggrieved. So aggrieved employees and the people within the organization are often the biggest threat to information security than what the technology is or hacking from outside. We also got Gartner in to do an IT risk assessment, so it's looking at it from a slightly different angle, and also do a security assessment in our environment, and they gave us a 2+, which is quite. It compares very favorably with most organizations our size, whether it's in the private sector or other more advanced governments. But they've also made some recommendations and areas for us to improve our IT security posture. They did note that we do have insufficient skilled IT security staff, but that we know. They've also recommended that we establish a target security governance structure, which we're busy with enablement process and roadmaps to ensure that we continuously improve our IT maturity. They've also made a recommendation that we already have quite a bit of tools. We must just optimize those even further, and particularly with our move to the cloud and in the light of our digital transformation strategy that we've embarked upon. And then they have recommended that we do a data security and privacy program, establish that, and of course also establish a security risk assurance function. Now all of that we're busy with, but all of that requires more staff, and unfortunately we don't have as much skilled staff as we would have liked to have had. But the most important thing is they did give us an assessment of 2+, which is comparative to most organizations around the world of our size. Just to let the members, just to kind of give it a different thinking, we kind of live in the world of 3 rings. You know, the physical realm that we're very used to, the mind, you know, what happens in that space, and of course the digital world, which is something that came through later in the last century. And these 3 worlds are always in conflict with each other, or they're complementing with each other, they're changing all the time, they interact with each other, they impact each other. And this new paradigm, and of course, what happens is that the new paradigms in the world and society and business is changing, and it's accentuated by this dramatic internet prevalence, social media, and then most importantly, the complexity that comes with all of that stuff. And that translates into the IT environment. So whenever there's a bit of, compromise somewhere, there's an attack on, or a site gets compromised, there's a lot of media hype, but the reality is very often different. So if you take all of these that I've kind of displayed here, once you analyze the actual incident, it's never as bad or as big or as massive as what the media makes out to be. And it is important that clear communication be given during those times, and that it be as short as possible. So the Life Health Group, they were taken down by a massive cyber attack. Despite all the funding and efforts in the firewalls, they were taken down by in a particular cyber attack recently. And the CEO came forward and he brought sanity back into the hype. And very often that's what we need to do. The same thing with Johannesburg, with the hacking of the city of Johannesburg in last year. When they hacked, you know, there was a whole lot of stuff in the newspaper and all the other stuff. They got to be complimented on managing the hype, getting it down to what was actually compromised and addressing it and fixing it, whilst all the noise was going on around them. The same thing with the President's office in 2018. They simply just issued a small statement and went right down to what the cause of it and worked on it, and not focused on the hype. We do the same. So we try and not focus on the hype and that noise that's around there, and rather focus on what is the problem, get to the root of it as quickly as possible, and fix it as quickly as possible. So what do we do in the event of an attack? This is very similar to what most organizations follow around the world. We remove the hype, we minimize emotionalism, and we isolate the noise. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to find the root cause. So we focus on the facts and the evidence. We find and isolate the root cause of the incident. You fix it across immediately similar environments. You go back to the basics of governance and controls and improve it. You then learn from that incident, and you implement and or fine-tune preventive and proaction measures. And you monitor the total IT spectrum of the IT environment, which we do at the moment. And then it's important that we analyze logs and audits continuously. And then it has to be integrated with this whole security environment. The way you react to it when there's a breach must be integrated with your business continuity plan, as well as your disaster recovery plan, because your disaster plan will kick in to recover from the incident. We work very closely with CETA and other government agencies if there is an attack or anything has been compromised. And we also work closely with our key technology partners, which is Microsoft, Cisco, and OpenText. And they provide quite a lot of free services to us in order to protect their products in our environment and to protect their credibility of their products. So IT security is generally a corporate or a collective responsibility, but it is also an individual responsibility. And lately, it's also becoming a huge trust issue. And to develop that trust and ensure that that trust is there, it's important that at corporate level, right across the board, and that all individuals all cooperate with each other, and that the controls are there to ensure that that does happen. So in order to ensure that that does happen, one's got to focus on people, technology, and process. So it's one thing to look at your technology and try and protect it, but if your processes are flawed, it will compromise the entire security space. And the people as well need to be aware of and skilled in those particular, need to be made aware of it continuously, of the risks of attacking, possibility of phishing and malware and all the other things, and don't do anything stupid. So awareness is absolutely crucial as far as people is concerned, changing the working culture, and we're working on that all the time. Also improving processes and all the other stuff. But all of this is normally and has to be underpinned by good legislation, governance, strong and strong controls, which we continuously work on. All of that in balance tries to achieve what's in the middle, which is effective IT security. So if we look at the previous slide, where we look at process, technology, and people, what are we doing in all of those spaces? And how do we manage the risks and potential threats in each of those spaces? The areas that are highlighted in red are the ones that continuously come up as the more important ones that we need to look at. Obviously, the physical devices. In our environment, we've got a tremendous amount of physical devices, and memory sticks that we all use all over the place tends to be a huge risk in introducing viruses and malware and ransomware into the environment. Internet browsers, we all use internet browsers to access systems, access social media, and all sorts of other things. That also gets used as a medium to attack. Obviously, the internet and all sorts of other social media platforms, we're continuously working on those and strengthening those, because they are used lately more and more as platforms for attack or to get into your environment. Personal cloud services is something that is emerging as a key threat to our environment because people are making use of their own personal cloud services all over this place. We've also are using cloud services. We're moving more and more of our information into some sort of clouds, whether it's a private cloud or in the center space or whatever the case, because it offers generally far better security, and we're focusing on that. As far as people is concerned, we're continuously addressing the lack of awareness, responsibility, and accountability, and also the consequence of user behavior in the internet environment, the use of social media, and the way they actually control the passwords, manage the passwords, and that sort of stuff. We're also trying to change the work culture and attitude towards the cyber space, and that people need to be aware of the obvious. Where there's an email with a link, a strange link or dubious link, delete it, don't even go into it, and so forth and so on. Disgruntled employees and managers or contractors remain a huge risk, and we're continuously working on those. That the minute there is something that occurs, or the people leave, you disable their account as quickly as possible, or you disable if people are busy with disciplining employees, be careful as to how you manage the access. And it is very often, and departments have done this, or they rather reduce their access to certain parts of different systems as a precautionary measure. As far as process is concerned, we focus primarily on two big ones. That is the management of incident and breach and security breaches, and change control. Change control management on our space, we take it quite strongly as far as the process is concerned. We don't allow any changes to be introduced into the IT environment, into the technology space, without proper authority and proper assessments of what the change is going to be done. And we're continuously managing incidents and breaches through the analysis of logs, and if anything that we pick up, we immediately take action as far as the process is concerned. So what is generally the motivation behind cyber crime or behind cyber activity that is untoward? There's what we call hacktivism and also cyber crime. Cyber crime is basically where people are trying to get to your money. Hacktivism is people trying to get into your environment and expose you and knock your credibility to a bit of pieces. Which are the areas that are mostly affected? Is the banking sector. They are primarily the area that is focused upon the most, and for obvious reasons, and also the information technology space. And there I mean it's the big giants of Microsoft, Cisco, Google, Facebook, Twitter. They're merging now as the big targets, but government is also there in the middle in healthcare. If I go on, recently there was a huge study that was done. What are the cyber trends that we're facing today? Where are the areas that are affected the most? The three top areas that are now being targeted is finance and banking, technology, as I mentioned earlier, and government. So we have to take security in the government space seriously, and we have to invest in it because we are a target. We are in the top three target areas. The biggest concern during an attack is usually the loss of sensitive data, because it can impact your customers and your relationship with them, in our case, our clients, our citizens, and also the normal business operations of our space and everywhere else. Over 72% of organizations consider the cost of cybersecurity to be quite reasonable and inexpensive in relation to the value that it provides to the organization. The most likely attrition for attacks are hacker groups, individual hackers, and then criminal organizations. Criminal organizations is becoming very big, and organized crime has climbed into the cybersecurity space quite a bit because there is a lot of they can profit from that. So most organizations are planning an average spend increase despite the downwind in the economy of 67% in the overall budget for the next year or two. The most likely types of cyber attacks, generally speaking, it's targeted phishing. It's something that you normally insert in your email, and they phish for you. You click on the link, and then they harvest your credentials. Ransomware and malware is pretty big. Those are the two that often get used the most because you can simply attach it to an email, or you can attach it to something on social media, or whatever the case is. An emerging one is cryptocurrency miners. So if you happen to have cryptocurrency, it will be normally on your machine of one kind or the other. And the latest is mining those cryptocurrencies that you have and stealing it from you. So the most likely targets of cyber attack, as we said earlier, it's the banking sector. They're up there, so it has not changed over the past couple of years. They continuously have increased, but government is also there at 10% of the overall cyber attack activity. So we have to protect ourselves as much as possible. So what do we do? So as part of our defense strategy, and this is just a very high level view, we focus on all of these areas. We focus on our physical security of all our IT assets. We focus on policies and procedures around managing all of those and operationalizing all of those. We focus on network security extensively. We focus on firewalls and virtual private networks. We also focus on system hardening, user account management. That's absolutely crucial that we do. We also make sure that patch management is deployed to machines and servers and network devices as quickly as they come out. We also have got malware and detection and prevention mechanisms and antivirus software and all of that stuff that we load and we continuously update across the network, so that we try and stay on the latest possible security patch levels as much as possible. We also focus on human resource security, and of course we back up all our systems and all our data, so that in the event of any attack, we always go back to the data, your backups. So this is in general what our high-level strategy as far as the defending our environment. One of the battle that we always have is when does one spend too much on security, and when does IT security become your worst liability? Because you can strengthen your environment so much that eventually it becomes a useless environment. And then how much money do you spend on it? Do you spend 10 million protecting 1 million rand, or do you spend 1 million rand protecting your 1 billion rand worth of investments? So if you look at the province, we've got a budget of 71 billion for this financial year, and we spend roughly 24 million on IT security. Is that an adequate balance? That's always the debate that takes place, but we must have these discussions. So we've got a dedicated IT security team. It's headed by Ms. Deirdre Marais. She's our Chief Information Security Officer, IT Security Officer, and she's supported by strong security consultancy work that we do, premier support engineers, and we've got technologists that also head with this. I must just say that although the team is very small, it's complemented by the entire CI. In other words, the entire spectrum of all the areas within the IT space as part of virtual teams. So every area of technology, there is a focus on IT security as part of the basic mandate and basic function. And of course, we also work with departments as far ensuring that the MIS is implemented and that the security committees and user account management and the BCPs and the disaster recovery plans are all in place in order to support an attack or anything like that. So what do we do to combat the total onslaught? This is a continuous thing that one does. It's not a once-off thing. We're continuously looking at all this and improving it. So we've got a dedicated IT security unit that I mentioned. Our focus at the moment is continuously identifying IT security risks, have a register, and managing it and mitigating those risks, and a continuous IT security awareness amongst our user community. That is what kind of we're focusing on. We still focus on the other areas, but those two are the biggest ones that we focus on at the moment. We've also got a dedicated IT governance unit that supports the IT security unit, and their focus is in helping us to identify IT risks and, of course, focus on IT security. We also we've got a dedicated network management unit that monitors the network across the board on a 24-hour basis by 7, and we're managing and monitoring any possible incident or any possible breach or unusual activity or dubious activity across 900 servers, 4,000 network devices, 24,500 workstations, and also the activity of our 25,500 users, whether it's the email or whatever the case is. We also monitor our network capacity, and we look at trends and funny things that may be going on there, which could indicate a breach of some kind or somebody trying to attack us. Typically through a denial of service attack, you can actually see the activity, rise. And of course, we continuously do the rest. Most of our applications and systems have been migrated into a cloud of some kind or the other, where security is far better, far stronger, and actually more affordable. Our current focus activities, as Hilton has mentioned, we're focusing on multi-factor authentication. It's just another layer that will help the 28,500 users that we have and the 24,400 workstations strengthen that space, so that if somebody logs on somewhere on another device, you will get an SMS or an email to approve it, so that it's not foreigners trying to come into your network to try and attack you. We are continuously planning and having a security awareness campaigns.
Mr. Fritters, we must try and round up now.
Okay, all right. So this is kind of what we're doing. We're kind of focusing on all of this, and IT security is very complex and expensive, and all organizations across the world are grappling with it. And finally, I'd just like to add, finalize that IT security is a journey with no end state, but we must have an acceptable level of assurance, trust, and a common sense of comfort through our security controls. Thank you, folks.
Chair, thank you very much for that. I mean, we are open now for any questions. And I mean, this was really just to provide you with the assurance that we're putting the necessary steps in place to protect our IT environment as a provincial government. Chair, can I hand back to you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, DG. Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to yourself and the rest of the members on the platform and our guests. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. DG, and thank you for your team, Mr. Arendse and Mr. De Freitas, for the presentation. And I cannot imagine the complexity of the environment in which you operate, and the presentation has provided a level of comfort to myself in terms of the defenses that you have created in terms of IT security within the province. However, just a few questions for clarity would suffice, in a sense that where the initial sort of request for this briefing emanated from Cressida, did you at that stage or by now establish where the threat emanated from, that ransomware attack at the time? Secondly, a second question, Mr. Chair, is that what is your department's relationship with CETA with regard to the monitoring and mitigating of possible external threats to our IT sort of system and environment? Thirdly, Chair, given this new working environment that came about as a result of COVID-19, where many employees work remotely and access the system remotely with their various devices, is there possible additional or new security risk that may emanate from this external sort of working platforms from which we operate? And then it was mentioned in the presentation, Chair, is that often there are disgruntled employees that have access to the system that pose enormous risk to our system. That may be true, but there are also suppliers and external consultants that, provide various services to our government that may be disgruntled for whatever reason. Are there adequate measures in place to manage that relationship, and when the relationship may suffer some challenges, to have a restrictive measures in place to prevent them from perpetrating any forms of acts of sabotage? And then a further question, Chair, and I'm going to wrap up now, is that employees may not always be disgruntled, that may pose a possible threat to the system. It may be due to a lack of education and understanding the environment in which they operate and what threats external influences may pose to our system. The question is, what kind of ongoing education processes are in place to retain a heightened sense of awareness amongst our employees in terms of the need for security? Because, and lastly, maybe I'll just finish off. The firewalls that are in place, are they adequate to prevent employees, due to their ignorance perhaps at times, to download certain foreignware, i.e. malware and ransomware, onto their own work platforms that may pose a security risk? Thank you, Chair. I'll stop there for now.
Honorable Partman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, mine, while related to this particular topic, is more about fake news and fake news that are in our communities. We are all on WhatsApp groups and Facebook pages and Twitter pages and every other platform that we have that has a page and a WhatsApp group and stuff like that. And often on these, for example, the WhatsApp groups, we get a lot of messages regarding 5G, regarding 5G towers, regarding the effects of 5G in our communities. And I just wanted to find out, both within government and within communities within the Western Cape, what is the department doing in order to make sure, I think the word that was previously used is to take the emotion and the hype out of it. So what are we doing to take the emotion and hype out and to educate both government and our communities about what 5G is and how it's being implemented and how security risks are actions are put in place in order to ensure that there aren't security risks to 5G in whether the Western Cape and or South Africa. Thank you.
Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I don't have a lot of questions. It's just to get the clarity, just one clarity. The Standing Committee of SCOPA for this presentation, it was specific for the AG report after or the outcome that the cyber attack that happened to the information. So I just want to find out that in that respect, and I know that the department is saying that there's no 100% guarantee, and I didn't get, maybe, and correct me if maybe I was not listening, I didn't get that. How is that going to be attended to? I hear all the, I mean, it's a lot to take in about the IT, that just the few minutes that we have, I can make sense to me. I still have to go on again and again to understand. But how are we going, or how is the department going to make sure that the information, as you store it, it doesn't, you don't get compromised, that it happened again like Casidra, it happened in Casidra. Because if you have been having the firewall and anti-virus mechanisms that has been there, and that happened, and you identify that there are specifics that can cause that. But when coming to the issue of now the AG, when it does its audit, there is the information that is not there because of that. How are we going to move, or how is all the departments going to make sure that that doesn't happen? Again, I'm just talking about specific, that maybe we can get the answer to a specific problem that happened. What is the specific solution to it, not to reoccur again in future? Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Maseko. Honorable Ngondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. I've got, I think, just a few questions, Chair. One may not necessarily be within the scope of the presentation. Especially, I just want, taking from what Member Bartman was asking in relation to, propelling IT as an enabler and fast-tracking service delivery, just to get an indication from the Department of the Premier, because this project was led from the former Premier to the current, by the Premier's office. And if maybe they don't have the information at hand, they can always send it through. I just want to understand that what has been the latest on the Wi-Fi hotspot project that initially, I think the Premier's office was to ensure each community is actually getting Wi-Fi, and then the project was changed, I think, in the later years of the last administration to schools. Does the Premier, can they maybe give an indication of how far is this? But secondly, the issue of IT and connectivity, especially in relation now to the problems of COVID, is actually the broadband infrastructure. What is the state, if maybe there could be any indication, what is the state of broadband infrastructure in the province to enable, connectivity of both departments, including, communities? And I'm raising this especially in those departments that you find in communities, in terms of their establishment, because one had seen some of those challenges currently. I just want to make an example of the lockdown regulation, that required that small businesses, informal traders be given permits. It was very difficult for some of those municipal offices. Some had to depend on going to town because sometimes the system is blocked or the system is down and all of those things. So that is why I'm trying to understand the situation and the state of broadband infrastructure to enable connectivity. What is the situation in the province across, especially for government services? Now, coming back to the issue that we're dealing with, I think in one of the slides, I think there's an indication there, and I liked, I think, what the presenter was referring to, of the issue of say the cost, of security, including, IT security. Because one thing that I think for me, and I may be wrong, I'm not in the security cluster or in IT per se, but one thing one has seen in terms of the biggest costs of organizations, both public and private, is always in the security space and now in the IT. because there is an important need, you know, to protect information, you know, you would always have to try and ensure you spend, you know, in putting up IT enablements. But there are two challenges there that I'm trying to understand. One is the cost, is that as you get into the IT space, are we seeing any efficiencies from a cost point of view, you know, when we enable these things through IT solutions? And I'm asking that in terms of your aggregate spend, you know, on IT, but also are we gaining any particular value from such you know, spend? And I think the second part for me of that question is the protocols, because at most those IT security solutions are always predominantly, and I can be corrected if the Premier's office or government in general has got that capacity, are always provided by third parties. Or now the issue for me is what protocols for state information are there in relation to that, because here you've got a situation where a private company has got, you know, is sitting, you know, with state information, because obviously the solution is theirs, whether it's information of the database of beneficiaries or database of people that are in the department, the information, you know, of the state about project and decision making and all of that. So what protocols are there in relation to that, and whether those protocols, are they working, especially when we start talking about, you know, issues of inside trading, where such information, a private company can utilize it, you know, to make itself, you know, ahead of others, you know, in pitching for future projects, or, you know, suggesting or directing actually, you know, a government, and where you find government is no longer, you know, taking issues, it's more corporate interests that are driving. So I'm asking that particular questions in terms of the IT as it relates, I think, to that slide on spending. I'm gonna stop there for now, Chair. Thank you very much.
Oh no, so thank you very much, Honorable. As we're ending, we're indicating that you might come back again.
Only if, Chair, if there's a follow-up from these questions, but if, I mean, because of time, I can always send my questions to you for further clarity by the department.
Okay. Now, just from my side, DG, before you might respond, I think in a way, Honorable America tried to mention this thing, that the original reasons that we wanted to have this meeting was based on the experience we picked up from Casidra. We would have loved at least some kind of elaboration as to how far have you also dealt with that issue of Casidra as well. It may be in your response, if you may try and capture that as well. Thanks. Otherwise, over to you, DG.
Thank you, Chair, and also thanks to the four members for raising those questions. Chair, just a note, and I'm sure Hilton will talk about it. I mean, Casidra is a public entity. In fact, they're a 3D business enterprise, and I mean, our understanding was to talk about, you know, what is it that we need to do to prevent a similar occurrence. But I mean, if you want us, you know, to maybe give you a little bit more detail on the Casidra stuff and what it is that we're doing, we can always come back at the next stage or even respond to you in writing. Chair, I'm going to ask, I'm going to go straight over to Hilton, and I'm going to ask Hilton just to wrap it up, but Hilton, just go through, you know, to the issue as quick as possible. I mean, not with long-winded, unnecessary answers, if you don't mind.
Thanks, DG. I get the cue. So Chairperson, there's a few questions that's been raised, and I'm going to try and cover most of them. So firstly, our relationship with CETA, we have a very strong relationship with CETA, and together we monitor the corporate environment. Those devices that's on our corporate environment, CETA has got firewalls on their side, we have firewalls on our side, so we're working together collaboratively. And we have found that when our applications are hosted within the CETA environment, there's much stronger controls and security around it. In terms of the remote work, possible ways, the new risks that may emanate, there's various risks. But the fact that people are now using their home Wi-Fi and that can be that could be unsecured or not protected by passwords, those are some of the, it immediately creates a risk on the side of the user, and that's why we've had some training interventions in that regard. Remember, America, as it pertains to the disgruntled employees, so we can put as much as possible technology in place, but it's also incumbent on the manager to know when an employee is disgruntled and to know when an employee has got access to very sensitive information and the threats that pose, and it's incumbent on the manager to also react to that immediately. So if you know that there's something malicious that could happen or that happened, or that person might use certain information, you need to make sure that he doesn't get access to his PC immediately or to his system. And then the fact that all employees are not always disgruntled, that's correct. And that is where Deirdre and the team are doing a brilliant work in terms of just training and providing people with the necessary information, and then also send them test mails just to see whether people will hook onto the phishing expeditions that we send out. So we send them in a mail and see whether they respond, and we get the report in terms of how many people actually clicked on the link that's suspect, and then we have a process afterwards to engage those people. The firewalls, whether they are adequate to prevent downloading from malware. We have firewalls internally. It's to protect people from the outside in, but also internally we have SquidGuard and various other protections, means of protection. But I think the key one is that none of us are allowed to download any applications onto our network, onto our devices, because only your services can do that. And even I, who I'm heading the IT unit, I'm not able to download anything onto my laptop that's malicious. It has to be done by the services.
Right. I'll call you after that. I receive your thing.
Okay.
I think.
Chair, your mic. Chair,
there's some interference. Hilton, just try and wrap up.
Okay, Honorable Bartman, can we do not have a focus on the 5G messaging at this stage, but it's something that we will look at, and we will have a discussion with our communications team. And the Honorable Maseko, in terms of how do we ensure that it does not happen again in Casidra, as the DG indicated, we do not have a role to play in Casidra, but in the Western Cape government, Oge has elaborated on what we are doing there. And perhaps if there's more specific things that you'd like us to discuss, then we'll do that. And Honorable Nkondlo, I think there's a lot of, we can have a detailed discussion on the broadband and the Wi-Fi hotspot, and I can see that's where your huge focus is. We just recently did a presentation to the broadband CECO on that. We have 803 Wi-Fi hotspots. We've rolled out many broadband sites. Many of our sites are even on 100 megs and more. And we can provide a detailed report specifically on the broadband to you, if and even do a presentation on the broadband to the committee if required. But we're quite excited about where we're heading towards in that space. Chairperson, I think that covers the bulk of the questions. Anything else that I've left out?
Chair.
Yes, DG. I want to check from members. Then, are there any follow-ups from honourable members? If there's none, I think then are there any issues from your side that you'd like to raise, DG?
Chair, from my side, there's no issue. I mean, if there are any other matter that you want as a follow-up, you are most welcome call us, and we will come back and respond to it. But other than that, Chair, in closing, just want to thank you and as well as all the members, I think, for the questions, and want to give you the assurance that we do what we need to do to protect our internal network, and in that also, protect, what we've built up over the years within the system. Thanks.
No, thank you very much, DG. I think maybe also it might be good, and I know one of the officials did respond on the issue of Casidra. Maybe it might assist if we can also get that, maybe as to what work has been done in writing. It might actually assist for the benefit and information of members.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll deal with that in the committee. Members, if there are no other issues or follow-up questions that you'd like to make, that then brings us to the end of this presentation by the Department of the Premier. Thank you very much, DG, and to you and the rest of your... Oh, there's a hand from Honorable Maseko.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, Chair, maybe if we can get the information from the department while they are still here. On the slide 15, where they talked about the people lack of capacity, and then there's a list there even of the disgruntled employees and managers, contractors, contracting parties, of how are they, because that much as is the IT, the action is being proactive, how are they going to counteract in themselves for this not to impact negatively or be costly in their departments, in the government side? We will appreciate to get the information to talk to that. And I'm asking this because I'm sort of interlinking from the first presentation we got from the education that there's a system of resigning before action can be taken. Now, if it has to do with the IT, before, if there's a mess that has been created by the employee because he knows he's leaving and something is coming up, how are they mitigating themselves to make sure that that is protected? Is there mechanisms in place of the human, because that is a human behavior, it's not the IT behavior, it's a human behavior of being proactive to stop something before it can happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Honorable Maseko. You were indicating that you'd like to get a response now.
If possible, I'll appreciate, but if not, we can,
Okay,
we're not going anywhere, we'll always be together. We can always get info from the department, Chair.
Okay, DG?
Hilton, you want to give a quick response?
DG, I would like to respond positively in this regard, but I just need to understand for clarity. So is the member asking what are we doing proactively from the people side and not the technology side? Because as I've indicated earlier, when it comes to disgruntled employees and when there's issues there, it's the manager need to take responsibility, and the line function manager need to take responsibility for that and understand what is the risk that's been posed. We know our employees, we know what the potential risk is, we know what they've been up to. So the manager needs to take responsibility, and we'll assist the manager with whatever technological solution we can put in place. But we will not be aware of each and every event that happens in the province. It will be completely impossible for us. So the managers need to drive that process for us. And once you call on us, we'll step in and assist.
Yeah. I think it's a bit wider than that, Chair. I mean, maybe I should give the assurance to say that from a CI perspective, we're putting in the control. So whether somebody is disgruntled or not, I think what Hilton is referring to, if an employee is disgruntled, it just poses a higher level of risk for a particular department. But our role as CI is to put in the necessary controls so that we do not actually have these respective breaches. And I think it connects to what Brian has indicated from his side. I don't know whether that suffices, Chair.
Chair, I think I'm answered a bit, but to an extent, the issue of the lack of capacity is impacting on the department.
Okay.
Hilton, you will have to talk about the capacity there, yes?
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks for the clarity, member. Member, the lack of capacity, as you see, the realm of information security is wide and deep. And our capacity, whilst we're saying that we need additional capacity, doesn't mean that we have overexposed ourselves. So with the capacity that we have, we focus on the critical areas. And Augie made a key point in his presentation is that information security is not just the responsibility of that core information security team. It's actually the responsibility in each and every IT employee. And I want to go further and say it's each and every employee's responsibility to make sure that we protect the information of this organization. So yes, inadequate capacity perhaps in the more technical skills, and there was a question on the fact that we use external service providers, but we also need to balance the cost of that skills versus whether we can accommodate those skills internally on our salary levels. In some cases, these are highly technical skills, and we use it as and when required. But with what we have at the moment, whilst stretched to the limit, we are managing our information security risks at this stage.
That's it from our side, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think then that really brings us now to the end of this presentation of the Department of the Premier. Let me make use of this opportunity once again to thank you, DG, and your team. You may now be excused at the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. We will appropriately dialogue, and thank you for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, thanks, honorable members. And now the next item on our agenda will be the minutes procedural officer. In terms of the agenda, having finished O's presentation, we will first deal with the minutes and thereafter deal with the resolution. Or you want us to deal with the resolution first, or then the minutes? Honorable, I see. Is it Honorable Partman or Honorable Maseko?
Oh no, Chair. I just wanted to find out when you would like us to put in our resolutions from the presentation, but I will wait for after the minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. Honorable Maseko, is your hand up?
Yeah, Chair, I was saying, I know in Western Cape you understand meaning I would have preferred if we do the resolution whilst we remember everything. You know, age sometimes is not at our side, some of us.
Okay, you prefer we do that, no problem. Then I think we prefer we do that. Are there any proposed resolution? I would really like the fact that maybe if we can just get an in-depth kind of a response of how the department has also dealt with that issue of Casidra, because that's really what prompted us to call them here. That will be one. That will be that one from my side, Honorable Batman.
Thank you, Chair. I would please like to find out whether the department could send us in writing the policy position and or general position of the department regarding 5G, and if there are any programs related to 5G, if they could put those programs in the information for us, as well as what messaging they have put out regarding 5G, if any, regarding fake news that are within our communities. Thank you, Chairperson.
Got it, Chair.
Thank you very much. That is well captured, Honorable Batman. Any other member on resolution? Honorable Nkondlo.
Chair, because of time, I didn't want to make a follow-up on the detail around the question that I've asked, but I'm happy that the department says they even have a presentation. So on the current broadband infrastructure in the province, together with the progress on the Wi-Fi hotspots that they are driving as the Department of the Premier. So if they can be able to share that presentation with us, Chair, I think that will help. I can maybe, twist the finger of our chair here, another chair, for such a presentation be done in our economic development, just to understand, especially given the COVID-19 and the fact that with ESCOM tripping at times and all the other problems, the issue of broadband infrastructure to enable connectivity is a serious issue if we are to talk about economic opening up the economy. But I know it's not a main focus of this, so that's why I'm saying I can maybe twist a finger, of my other chair that is also in this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is well noted, Honorable Ngondlo. Is there any other proposal for a resolution? If there's none, thank you very much, Honorable Maseko.
I forgot one thing. Can I add another bite?
Yes, Honorable.
Chair, they mentioned a cybersecurity study in the presentation, and I wanted to find out if they could please forward that study to us as well.
Good one. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Honorable Bartman. If there is nothing, thank you very much, Honorable. Then we move on to the next item, which is the minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes that are going to be presented to us, Procedural Officer.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members. I have captured those resolutions. I would just want to share, Chair, just 2 sets of minutes, Chair. The 22nd of just want to get there, Chair. It was the 22nd of May, and then the 12th of June, Chairperson. I see that Lizette's got it on there. I'll just take mine off. Okay, so there's a 22nd of May, Chairperson. This minutes could not be adopted at the last meeting, Chairperson.
Excellent. Yeah, it took that previous meeting of the 12th of June was very long.
Yes.
Can you just then go up with the minutes? There we go. Item
just
1.
Standard minutes, Chair. Then we had the briefing by the DCAS, the Cultural Affairs and Sport, and we also had DDAT, Economic Development and Tourism, Chairperson.
Yes.
And then there was just at that meeting, Chair, of the 22nd of May, we adopted the 8th of May minutes and then the draft committee program. And then there was just that matter arising, Chairperson, that you indicated with that with the Doornbach matter, that it's advisable if we maybe have it virtually and not in committee at the legislature building, Chair.
Excellent. Honorable Maseko.
Chair, I raise in support of to adopt the minutes.
Thank you very much for that. Any seconder?
I second.
I second that, Chair.
Seconded and thirded.
Got that, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, members.
The next set of minutes.
Yes, then the next set of minutes, Chairperson, is the 12th of June, Chairperson. Was it just flighting that for us as well, Chairperson? There we got everyone that was present in the meeting, Chair. And we had some alternate members that was also in the meeting, Chair. Then we can go down, let's say, to the next page. Yeah. There's the
just on this one, just maybe to mention also, you will see. But anyway, let's go through the minutes.
Yeah. And then, Chairperson, it was basically just we just tried to make this more detailed, Chairperson, to have that a reflection of what happened in the meeting, Chair, but also not to have a detailed, this member said that member said that, Chairperson, because that's not how we capture our minutes normally, Chair. But seeing that this was just a special meeting, Chair, we just raised, especially under point 3 on the way forward, basically what was the highlights that the members wrote, Chair, that they expressed, so that we at least have those important matters on the way forward, Chairperson.
Okay. If you go a little bit slower on that, is it? Go up, fine, up, 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 up. There is the minutes, honorable members. Any matters arising or proposal for the adoption of the minutes? I see Honorable Maseko. Is your hand up? I see Honorable America also. Honorable Maseko?
No, I'm sorry, Chair. I forgot to drop my hand. It's an old hand.
America?
I propose that we adopt, Chair. Minutes.
Proposal for the adoption of the minutes.
Supported.
I second, Chair.
Seconded and third. Thank you very much, honorable members. I must say the minutes took much shorter than the actual minutes, than the actual meeting that meeting was held at. So thank you very much. There is some collectivity there. Then, honorable members, then if there is no other issue regarding that, and also just I think that has brought us to the end of the meeting, or is there any other issue, honorable, procedural officer?
Yes, Chair, thank you, Chair. Sorry, members. Chair, in our resolution of last year, Chair, when the committee sat on the annual reports of the departments and the entities, that was in October and November, the committee had a report, Chairperson, that the committee adopted in late November. I'm just going to flight it, Chair. Chair, there was one resolution, Chair, or actually there were two resolutions throughout the whole document. There were two resolutions where the committee raised issues. The one was for the Standing Committee of Health, and the other one, Chair, was for the Standing Committee on Agriculture. Then, Chairperson, two letters went out to those chairpersons just to indicate, look, that the committee dealt with some issues in the annual reports, and it's felt that this matter should be referred to those committees for follow-up, and then basically they can give us either a report back or just minutes to say that the matter has been concluded, Chair. Chair, I just want to bring that ATC up, Chairperson, just to give a reference of what I'm talking about. Can everyone see that, Chair?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so let me just widen this. Right, there we go. So, Chairperson, this is for health. This for the Department of Health. So that annual report, Chairperson, that we dealt with, Chair, there was one issue, and it's here around about background concerns is captured there. It says the committee notes that the department has made significant progress with the management of its risks. And then the risks are then highlighted there, Chairperson: budgetary, staff, stockouts of essential pharmaceutical goods, fraud, service delivery pressures, water shortages, and aging infrastructure and technology. And then the resolution was, Chair, that the department brief the Standing Committee on Health on the progress made in addressing and mitigating the potential impact of the risks identified by the Audit Committee. And then there's an action date, which is supposed to be scheduled by the Standing Committee on Health, Chair. Chair, the Standing Committee on Health has arranged this meeting, Chairperson, for this Wednesday coming, Chair, I just want to show it here as well. I just want to, I don't know if the members can see it. I just want to get that on the screen as well. Can the members see that one, Chair? Can you see that notice?
No.
Okay. So, okay, can't you see the notice? I just want to then go, Chair, just give me just a minute there, Chair. Let me just go here. But Chairperson, basically, and I will email this to the members as well, Chair, it's just a notice of a meeting for next Wednesday by the Standing Committee on Health, only on this matter, Chairperson. It's from 9 o'clock next Wednesday till 12 o'clock, Chairperson. Also via MS Teams, Chair. I will email this notice to the SCOPA members, Chair, and that is an invite by the committee chairperson, Ms. Philander. She arranged a meeting for that, Chairperson. And so far, Chairperson, the committee coordinator of that meeting has invited all of the SCOPA members to that meeting, Chairperson. And it's just for the members to then indicate if they're going to then attend or not, Chairperson.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that. I think that information is clear and straightforward. So, and especially if the invite has already been sent to the members, it will just be a question of just reminding them as well to actually to attend and be part of that meeting.
Okay, Member America's got a question.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I've been receiving that invitation from the Health Committee, and I didn't know where it was coming from, so now it makes sense. But myself and Honourable Maseko, we on oversight on that day, and I don't think logistically it will be possible for myself, I can speak for myself, to be able to attend that particular meeting. Thank you, Chair.
We will represent you, Honorable.
Okay.
We will represent you. Any other member who might not be able to attend, so that at least when we are there, we can also give an indication of those members. Honorable
Chair, as indicated by Member America, I will be in an oversight with my Honorable America.
Excellent, excellent. Honorable Patman. Honorable Bartman.
Sorry, Chair, I was speaking to myself. Chair, the next week, Wednesday, I'm not sure if I'm going to be available, but if it is needed for me to be there, then I will do my best to be in the meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. That will be very good, Honorable. Thank you very much, members. Then with all that, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.